Stickman sprays his fragrance before work. 2 sprays. Smells incredible. Walks out the door feeling like a completely different person. 30 minutes later, he checks his wrist. Smells nothing. So he sprays again. Still nothing. 1 more just to be sure. By lunchtime, he's convinced he wasted money on a fragrance that doesn't even last an hour. He's mentally writing the 1-star review. His coworker quietly stands up, walks to the window without saying a single word, and opens it. Stickman thinks his fragrance disappeared. His coworker wishes it had. Here's what actually happened. The fragrance never stopped working. Stickman's brain simply decided to stop reporting it. And once you understand why that happens, you'll stop wasting sprays, stop second-guessing fragrances you paid good money for, and probably stop being the reason people need fresh air. Honestly, that last one's probably the important part. So what's going on? Here's the thing most people get completely wrong about this. They assume if they can't smell it, it's gone, which sounds perfectly logical, except it's completely wrong. There's a thing called olfactory fatigue, or nose blindness if we're not trying to sound like scientists. Your brain, bless it, gets bored of processing the same smell over and over. Not because the smell disappeared, because your brain already knows it's there and goes, "Yep, got it." It registered the fragrance, logged it, filed the paperwork, and moved on to something it finds more interesting, which is apparently literally anything else. Think about your fan or your AC. It's been making the same noise this whole time. You just stopped noticing it. The sound never disappeared. Your brain basically looked at it and went, "Yep, still a fan," and moved on. Now think about your own house for a second. You walk into it every single day and never notice how it smells. Then someone comes over and asks if your dog peed somewhere, which is a slightly unfortunate way to find out your nose gave up weeks ago. Your fragrance works exactly the same way. You spray it, your brain logs it, and about 20 to 30 minutes later, it quietly moves it into the background. Not because it faded, because your brain already knows it's there, so it stops reminding you every 5 seconds. Meanwhile, everyone around you is experiencing your fragrance perfectly. Every time you move, shift in your seat, or walk past someone, they get a fresh burst. To them, it's the first time they're smelling it. To you, it's just another minute of wearing the same fragrance. The only person in the building convinced your fragrance has disappeared is the one wearing it. Your fragrance is working. You're just the only one who doesn't get to enjoy it, which is, if nothing else, a fantastic argument for just trusting the process and leaving the bottle alone. So if the fragrance never left, why does spraying again suddenly make you smell it? Because you've just introduced something new your receptors haven't adjusted to yet. New smell, new information. Your brain wakes up for a minute, goes, "Oh, something changed," pays attention for a few minutes, then files that away too, right back to where it was. And this is where it gets expensive. And honestly, a little embarrassing once you know what's actually happening. You can't smell it, so you spray more. 5 more minutes of smelling it. Gone again. So you spray again. And by the time you leave the house, you've taken a completely reasonable 2-spray situation and turned it into something that requires emergency ventilation. You've created a scent cloud with a 5-meter radius, and you still can't smell a thing. Here's the part that should genuinely bother you. The people around you were smelling your fragrance perfectly fine after the very first spray. They didn't need more. They weren't sitting there thinking, "You know what this needs? Another 6 sprays." Every spray after the first wasn't fixing a problem. It was creating one. The fragrance was working. Your nose just couldn't confirm it, so you kept trying to fix something that was never broken. The most frustrating part? The person doing the overspraying is almost always the very last one to figure out what's happened. Stickman walked into work that day smelling like he was auditioning for a Dior commercial. He had absolutely no idea. His coworker, though, had a very long morning. So how do you actually check if your fragrance is still there? Not coffee beans, I'm sorry, but coffee beans are one of those things that survived almost entirely because perfume stores like the aesthetic. Little jar, fancy counter, feels scientific. Everyone nods along. Nobody asks if they actually work. Except coffee beans don't reset your olfactory receptors. They just introduce something different, and the novelty briefly grabs your attention. You're not resetting anything. You're just distracting your nose for 30 seconds and calling it science. It's one of those fragrance myths that spread so fast and so wide that questioning it now almost feels rude. What actually works is boring and simple, which is probably why nobody talks about it. Smell the inside of your elbow, or your shirt where you haven't sprayed, or just cup your hands over your nose and breathe normally for a few seconds without trying to smell anything. Your brain already treats your own natural smell as normal, so giving it something familiar for a few seconds helps it notice your fragrance again. This won't last forever. Your nose will adapt again within about 20 minutes. But if you genuinely want to know whether your fragrance is still there, that's how you check it. Or honestly, the more reliable option is just asking someone near you. Their nose is meeting your fragrance for the first time. Yours has been listening to it for the last 3 hours. One question, a lot more reliable than interrogating your wrist every 15 minutes. So now what do you do with all of this? Honestly, less than you think. If you've worn a fragrance before and you already know it performs well, stop using your own nose as the judge. Spray your normal 2 or 3 sprays and trust the fragrance to do its job. Your nose going quiet doesn't suddenly erase 6 hours of performance. More isn't better. If you can't smell your fragrance anymore, the answer usually isn't another spray. 9 times out of 10, it's just your brain doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The people around you are still getting the full experience. They don't need a reminder every 30 minutes. Easier said than done when you're standing there smelling absolutely nothing, but that's genuinely all it is. One thing I would change though, spray on fabric as well as skin. People obsess over pulse points way more than they need to. Your shirt and collar hold fragrance much longer than skin, and every time you move, they release little bits back into the air. You'll even catch the occasional whiff yourself throughout the day, which is a nice reminder that your fragrance never actually left. And if you're genuinely curious whether it's still projecting after a few hours, don't interrogate your wrist. Again, just ask someone. So here's the weird part. Your fragrance was probably never the problem. The only person convinced it disappeared was you. So next time you check your wrist 30 minutes later and get absolutely nothing, don't panic. Don't reach for the bottle. Just remember that your nose clocked out long before your fragrance did. And if you want fragrances that genuinely last all day, the kind that make this whole conversation almost irrelevant, I've got a video on exactly that right over there.